Kia ora, good evening. Developing clear and agreed advice for farmers. That's the intention of an industry-led working group looking at the issues with Swedes affecting dairy cattle in Southland. Work's currently being carried out on measuring and testing some crops in Southland following deaths and illness striking hundreds of cows who had been grazing on swede tops in recent months. The group, which is made up of some Southern veterinary representatives, Federated Farmers, Beef and Lamb New Zealand and PGG Rights and Seeds, is gathering evidence and science-based information through measuring and testing some crops. Further farmer advisories will be released within the next week, with advice to farmers on what to do now and for next season's crops. The burst pipe which caused sewage to leak into Bluff Harbour yesterday has been repaired, with the pumps turned back on at 11:30 last night. Acting Director of Works and Services Russell Pearson says Council will be checking the water quality in the affected area and working with Environment Southland and Public Health South. Mr Pearson says until further notice, people should avoid swimming or collecting shellfish in the harbour. Mr Pearson thanks Bluff residents for their cooperation in minimising water use last night. He says residents can now resume their normal household routine. Sport Southland is excited about being chosen as the lead agency to deliver an anti-obesity initiative in Invercargill. Research shows that Invercargill residents are above national levels in terms of our obesity. Government's investing $1.9 million in Invercargill over the next 4 years and have engaged Sport Southland to recruit a dedicated health promotion workforce to support people to make healthy lifestyle choices.
We're trying to influence change in the community. It's around 4 things. It's around more physical activity, better nutrition, a no smoking sort of policy, and more moderation of drinking and alcohol consumption.
What do you see as the barriers to achieving that currently?
I guess there's a whole lot of barriers, and lifestyle is one big one. But you know, it's around attacking the problem and the issues from a whole range of areas, places where we work, learn. So it's getting into sports clubs, it's getting to schools, it's getting to supermarkets. It's from a whole range of areas to try and influence that change and try and change the culture of Invercargill around those 4 areas I talked about earlier, and trying to reduce chronic disease. And that's the overall aim, is to reduce chronic disease in Invercargill.
Everything is yet to be designed as to how it actually will be delivered on the floor as such. Yeah,
it's all very new. We are modelling off a Healthier Together Victoria model, but it is very new for Invercargill and obviously for the rest of New Zealand. So that'll be developed over the next 3 to 6 months.
City Council will also be involved in this. What role will they be playing?
I think the City Council have got a huge role to play in terms of sitting on that governance board and having a role to play there. But you know, they effectively are the ones that around regulation. They have a lot of influence in the city around, you know, perhaps where takeaway shops are, where smoke-free areas are in parks and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think they've got a massive role to play.
You have run a similar program in South Invercargill previously. The results from that, was it encouraging?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the physical activity programs that we've run and better nutrition programs we run, the likes of our Fit for Life, we do see some markedly good results with those. But it's quite intensive around a small number of people. What we're trying to do with this is trying to get the change right throughout our community. Hence why, you know, 4 new staff being employed, and their role is to work with these other organisations to get a bigger change throughout the city.
It is only for 4 years. Is it something that needs a longer term approach, do you think?
I think absolutely, but I think if we can start the ball rolling, it is a good start, and it's great that the government are investing money to get things rolling. And I'm sure if we see the results through those 10 pilot areas, then perhaps more money will be invested to create it as something right throughout New Zealand.
And as far as age groups that are being targeted across the board?
Right through, from cradle to grave, I guess. You know, it is called Healthy Families, but I think it is for everyone to take some ownership of their decisions around physical activity, nutrition, smoking and drinking, and all play their part in changing our culture within Invercargill.
Those with a free moment or two tomorrow are being asked to join in with the Keep New Zealand Beautiful Week initiative to clean up Invers, starting with Otapuni Gardens. Event organiser, 3rd year SIT student Natalia Waka says 50 are already signed up to help, but she says the more the merrier.
So tomorrow we've got Keep New Zealand Beautiful Week that's going to be held down here at SIT main campus. We're going to be cleaning up down around here at the Otapuna Garden. I don't know if you can notice, but we've got a little bit of a problem down here in Invercargill.
There is a wee bit, isn't there?
Oh, just a tad. So the event's going to be held from 9 till 4 p.m. We've got three clean-up times. We've got from 9 to 11, 12 to 1, which we've got His Worship, the Mayor, Tim Chadbolt, coming along to participate. And then we've also got from 2 to 4 p.m. And so with the rubbish that's been collected, it's going to be used as part of kind of like my art sculpture medium, which I'm going to be creating this social awareness with a visual message.
So that is all part of your studying at SIT?
Yeah, so I'm a third year art student. I'm studying at SIT, Bachelor of Applied Media Arts degree. Part of my research studio project, I decided to research my question into how socially engaged art practice can create social awareness that we've got a little problem down here in Invercargill. I actually had the privilege of being able to attend the Keep New Zealand Beautiful conference in Wellington 2 weekends ago, and I was surrounded by some very like-minded, enthusiastic people who've got the initiative and the motivation to clean up our community in Aotearoa. So I just decided to tie Keep New Zealand Beautiful in with my one-day clean-up because it's for a good cause, and I chose to live in clean, green Aotearoa, and I think the rest of New Zealanders have chosen that too.
Coming up, competitive hairdressing at SIT and New Zealand First GST policy with tax expert Craig McAllister. Welcome back. There's been a series of fatal dog attacks on protected New Zealand fur seals on Otago beaches recently. Young fur seals are a common sight on our beaches and shorelines at this time of year, with newly weaned pups and juveniles aged 9 to 10 months coming ashore to strike out on their own. The biggest threats are humans and dogs, and the Department of Conservation says after a spate of recent attacks by dogs on fur seals, it's a timely reminder to dog owners they could face prosecution. Anyone charged under the Marine Mammals Protection Act with harassing, disturbing, injuring or killing a seal faces maximum penalties of 2 years imprisonment or a fine of up to $250,000. With it looking ever more likely that New Zealand First will have a say in who forms the next government, we thought we'd investigate two key aspects of the party's tax policy: the removal of GST from basic foodstuffs and from property rates. Hunter Andrews first asked tax expert Craig McAllister about removing GST from food.
It is possible, but it comes at two costs. One is the cost of the complexity of the tax system. The other cost, or the other thing that it comes at a cost of, is the fact that because our GST system is a value-added tax at each stage of the production of the goods, the people that actually produce or make those goods are then going to possibly factor in their GST input costs that they won't be able to claim anymore into their costs. So the cost of production potentially increase. So how effective it is at the end of the chain is an unknown factor. So it won't just be we can take the price of GST off at the supermarket and that's going to save everybody that amount of money. It could well be that the price of the goods and services that get to the supermarket are going to mean that the good at the supermarket is going to be all that much more expensive anyway, and therefore taking the GST off might just get you back to somewhere around about where we're at already. So these things need to be thought through, and it's a very quick thing to say, well gee, we're just going to remove the GST off certain food items and that's going to make them cheaper, but at the end of the day, when you think it through in a logic, coherent thought process, that's not necessarily going to be the way it's going to materialise in practice.
He's also looking at cutting, or saying that he'd like to cut tax, GST on rates. He calls it a tax on a tax.
Yes, it's interesting that rates are often picked at in terms of thinking about taxes on taxes, but there's many other examples of situations where you get a tax on a tax. So for example, beer and wine, there's an excise tax paid by the producers of beer and wine. When that beer and wine is sold in the supermarkets or the stores, then we pay GST on top of that. Petrol again is another example. There's a tax in petrol, there's also ACC in the petrol costs, and when that's purchased off the petrol reseller, we pay GST on that also. So GST is just not the only example of a tax on a tax. But by thinking about removing that, you've also got to think about, well, that might be fine, and again it creates a whole lot of problems around the compliance side of it. But putting that to one side, where's the money? The money that was currently coming in, flowing into the government for that, is then going to be taken from or propped up by somewhere else in the tax system, or the government's just going to have to say we're going to forego that revenue. And currently, when you look at the amount of the revenue that the government pretty much needs every cent at the moment, so it would be a very hard decision, I would have thought, for a government to take the GST off road.
Elementary hair design students went to great lengths today to create winning looks at the Southern Institute of Technology. Students followed specific criteria to compete in the creative long hair competition, producing some stunning hair-ups. Models were dressed by students, had their makeup applied and hair prepped before having just 30 minutes to create a winning hairstyle. Judging today's competition was Kyla McLean from Venom, who was looking for overall presentation, originality, detailing and technique as part of her role on deciding a winner. Newfield Kindergarten last night hosted an Enviro Fair for parents, teachers and children. Star of the fair for the young environmentalists was Bruce Seagull, who put in an appearance much to the joy of his legion of fans. Newfield Kindergarten is part of Enviro Schools project coordinated by Environment Southland. The kindergarten has undertaken a waste minimisation program as well as establishing a worm farm and composting system. Parents, teachers and children all celebrated their role in cleaning up the environment with a special cake baked to mark the occasion. And that's all from the news desk this Thursday. Sport follows the weather next. From the news team, good night.